in year 12. That's really useful for me to know. Thank you. Wonderful. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Let's get started. Welcome. This is the fourth session in the webinar series this year. Today's session is all about super-curricular exploration. We will chat more about what that means shortly. If you've never heard of that term before, don't worry, you will by the end of today. Today's aims then, so learn what super-curricular activities are, learn how to engage with them habitually. That's the crucial word there, should really be in bold. Learning how to integrate super-curriculars into your personal statement as well. So I am of the definite belief that super-curriculars are things you should be doing anyway, even if you didn't have to write a personal statement, even if you weren't applying to university. But for the purposes of today, and since I'm a representative of St John's College at University of Cambridge, I thought it would be useful for me to talk about super-curriculars in the sense of them being the content of your personal statement. And then we will, the most exciting part of today, have some practice of super-curricular thinking and discussion. So some of you may have read the articles I sent around via email. Don't worry if you haven't, it's not necessary to have read them at all. Just will have given you a little starting point to think about the super-curricular events that we will be discussing. But more of that later. First then, I have a question for all of you, and I'd love if you could put in the chat box your responses to this. What do you think the opportunities and the challenges are in terms of studying at uni from school to university? So thinking about that transition, what do you anticipate in terms of opportunities and also challenges? Let me open up the chat box and see your responses. Okay, great. We're getting a lot more independent learning coming through. Yes. That is, I guess, a challenge and an opportunity, which I hope that a lot of these will be. It's a very double-sided idea here. Yes. Figuring out your own timetable, balancing study and everything else, extracurriculars, social life. Time management, that kind of links to independent learning, doesn't it? And the work-life balance, as it were. A new environment? Yeah, absolutely. I think that's both an opportunity and a challenge. Often for a lot of people starting their university degree will be the first time they're living away from home. So that's a big change as well in terms of where you are and a whole new environment. Equally, there are all new communities and new support systems at university as well, but it is definitely a change. Yeah, self-led study, workload, increased workload. Yeah, and a lot of that is you have to take the initiative to do it and follow up with it. There is, of course, support, particularly at universities like Oxford and Cambridge, where you have the supervisions and the tutorial systems. You do get a lot of individual support if you are concerned about anything that you're not understanding in the work. But yeah, you do have to, in the first instance, get on with it yourself and try and figure it out. Yeah, deeper understanding, like a more appreciation for the topic, going beyond what is sufficient for a mark scheme in an exam. You're actually delving a little bit deeper. You're finding out more. You're finding out the truth behind the A-level level answers often. Yeah, brilliant. Motivating yourself. Yeah, absolutely. Prioritizing all of the different aspects of work and study. Wonderful. Thank you very much for putting your responses in there. It was really nice to get a sense. I think you've absolutely, you've hit all of these ones really. So these are just some things that I thought were important to talk about when we're thinking about the transition from school, from sixth form, from college to university level study. That independent study, you don't see it always when you're looking at typical work time in terms of lecture time, seminars, supervisions, tutorials. The independent study is really unique to each student. Some people will work a sort of 9 to 5 and they'll get all of their university work done, including self-study, in that sort of 9 to 5. Other people prefer to do things in the afternoon, have the afternoon off, and then work after dinner, for instance. It really depends on the individual, sorry, when you do the independent study. But yeah, it's really crucial. You'll be having to delve deeper into topics that have been brought up in lectures. You'll have to do some of your own reading. You'll have to figure out the answers to maths problems, for instance. You'll have to translate a passage on your own. With all of this, you are not just on your own and that's it. You have to do that in the first instance. But what a lot of students do, and indeed the way that the degree and the course and the structure of all the teaching and learning is set up, it actually encourages this collaboration, collaborative learning. So getting together with your friends that are also studying the same subject as you and going over the work that week, sharing lecture notes, figuring out what that particular article was saying, offering a solution to a question that your friend didn't quite get. So that sort of collaboration is a really wonderful thing, as well as the independent study. So these excuse me, sorry, these transferable skills like time management, we definitely mentioned that one when we were looking through all the reflections in the chat box just then. And also communication skills, both written and verbal. You, particularly for humanities and social sciences, you will need to write long form answers for your weekly supervisions or tutorials in particular, and also verbal communication, sort of defending that essay in the supervision, saying, well, yeah, this is why I argued this point, this is the evidence I found, and hearing from someone else about their alternative viewpoint. So that is communication as well, that sort of verbal sense. And then you've also got opportunities often to present your work, which is really exciting. So things like seminars, you can get up and talk about the thing that you've been studying that week, and listen to questions and comments from your peers and from the academics as well. So yeah, definitely communication. I don't think we touched on that, but we definitely got a lot of other transferable skills like time management, and work-life balance, all of that sort of stuff. University definitely offers you a lot more academic freedom. I think we did have this in quite a few of your responses, actually, it said in different ways. You're exploring the topics and the questions in more depth, and you're often coming up with your own answers. So although I was saying a bit facetiously there, you'll often at university delve deeper than what was the A-level version of the truth. You, in many ways, are coming up with your own responses. You are the future of the study of your subject in many ways. And we want to hear what you think about your subject. So definitely that independence of thought is a really important one as well. Engaging in discussions. So like I was saying, the supervisions, the tutorials, they're opportunities often for you to really spend an hour talking about an author, a particular era, or anything at all, really, whatever is relating to your subject, really at length, and have those really unique opportunities to discuss that with a subject expert and your friend who's also studying that subject, for instance. And then finally, responding to feedback and challenges to your argument, your ways of working, writing, your ways of responding to a question. These are skills in themselves, right? Learning how to respond to constructive criticism as well. I've got at the bottom the CAM Guides undergraduate link. So CAM Guides is something that's been set up by the university libraries here at Cambridge. You don't need a login to access the resources. So when I send around these slides following the session, have a look at the CAM Guides website, because it has a lot of resources about things like time management, academic note-taking, how to avoid plagiarizing, how to reference and cite properly, all sorts of things relating to exactly what we've been talking about, this transition from school to university study. You will find that it's really helpful to you at this stage. I think it will help your studies at the moment and help you think about how you can hone those skills in preparation for university, and indeed as you prepare your university application as well, as you're writing your personal statement. You will definitely find the resources on CAM Guides really useful, but it's actually specifically designed for students who are about to start university. So definitely have a look at it sooner rather than later, and I think you'll find it really, really helpful. So after that little plug of CAM Guides, which I love, I think it's a fantastic resource. What is super-curricular engagement? Well, I've kind of given the game away there by saying subject enrichment / super-curricular engagement. But can anyone nevertheless give me a definition of super-curricular engagement? What do I mean when I say super-curricular? Excellent. I can already see loads of responses in the chat. That's great. Yes, beyond the specification, outside of your school's curriculum with your subject, exploring your subject beyond, past the mark scheme, venturing beyond the syllabus. I love these phrases. These are great. Exactly. On top of, super means on top of. So in addition to, beyond, all of those ideas. Yeah, wonderful. Further research. Yes, absolutely. We've got examples here of the things that could count as supercurriculars, which we'll come to in just a minute. Reading, watching lectures, taking part in essay competitions. Fantastic, brilliant. Oh, you've all come along, but you already know what it is. That's great. So we will move quickly on then, because I think you've all got the sense of it, but just to establish what it is. Yeah, so exactly, it's enhancing what you're learning in school. It's building on your subject knowledge that you've gained through your study, your A-level studies or equivalent studies. It is crucially completely unique to you. So really, whatever you find most interesting in terms of your subject area, that is what Super-Curricular will be for you. So it's really unique to everyone. We can provide lots of suggestions. I will link in the follow-up email, lots of places that you can go to find these starting points to do your own Super-Curricular engagement. But ultimately, where you end up and how you sort of get to that place as well is going to be completely unique to you. You should be following your own interests and your own curiosity with Super-Curricular engagement. Thank you for the question that's come in the Q&A box. I will definitely answer that at the end. Super-curricular activities aim to deepen and broaden your understanding. They are both satisfying your curiosity and piquing it. So that kind of idea of it being an organic, ongoing process is really important here. So super-curricular engagement is not a one-off thing. It's not something that you've done on a random Tuesday in March and that's it. It's something that you should do habitually and really build into your routine, your sort of self-study exploration of your subject routine. And what you're essentially doing is getting that appreciation of the subject beyond the bounds of the curriculum, which you guys were all saying with your lovely phrases like venturing beyond the curriculum. What I will say is, before I go to that top tip on the right there, I think this will answer the question that's come in the Q&A box actually about supercurriculars versus extracurriculars. Essentially, extracurriculars can be supercurriculars sometimes. I will use an example that I've used ad nauseum. So apologies if I've already told you this example at some other session. But basically, imagine that you are part of the drama club at school or the debating society, anything like that. That is an extracurricular, something you're doing outside of lesson time. It's not necessarily going to be related to your subject interests. So thinking about your subject, your course area that you want to go on and do at higher education level, you want to go and study that at university. It's not necessarily connected. It is an extracurricular by definition. But if you are interested in humanities, in things like English or anything at all relating to texts and arguments, then you being part of a production of a play or you being part of a debate, of a discussion, you could use that as a springboard to do things, explore things that end up in your personal statement. So sometimes some extracurricular activities can be super-curricularified in that sense. But something like playing a musical instrument, if you're applying for maths, is wonderful. And a lot of our mathematicians are very musical. But that wouldn't be a super-curricular activity. So it wouldn't necessarily be something that you're putting a lot of focus on in your personal statement, the playing of the musical instrument, if you're a prospective maths applicant. That's just a random example, but I hope that helps distinguish between the two. Wonderful. Any other questions, do pop them in the Q&A box and I will come to them at the end. And a lot of them I hope will be answered in the follow-up email that I will send around to you all with various links and resources. So before we move on, top tip, definitely explore widely, but remember that you should be focused, particularly when you are coming to write the first and subsequent drafts of your personal statement. You want to make sure that you've built up a bank of activities and reflections on those supercurricular activities in a really focused way. So we're not looking for you to list like 100 books or 20 books that you've read. It's really not the quality, the quantity, crucial message there. And I garbled that. Let me start again. It's not the quantity that's important, it's the quality of your engagement. So definitely in the first instance, read far and wide, find an article that's referenced in a documentary, follow up with a lecture that you've watched on YouTube by reading or listening to the podcast of the person that gave that lecture that you watched. Definitely explore widely and cast the net wide. But then when you find the topic or topics, the few things that you think, yeah, these are the really interesting questions to me. This is what's unique to me, what's interesting to me in terms of my subject area, then focus on getting that quality. So then delve deeper, try and write your own response to an essay question, submit that for an essay competition, do something with that knowledge, with that exploration. So definitely cast your net wide, but then remember to bring it into the focus of what you're interested in. We don't want just long lists of books that you've read. So it's quality, not quantity. Almost confused myself there. Right, what counts then? I think we've, in my examples and also what we've talked about before, we've covered a lot of these. So it's books. Reading around your subject was often the definition that you gave me in the chat box earlier. But it's more than just books. And a lot of it is completely free to access. Sometimes things have subscriptions, but you can often get them through your school or through your school library. So definitely ask your teachers about this, because you might actually have access to it through your school email or something like that. So things like news websites, podcasts, blogs, journals, magazines, open access research repositories and open access libraries online as well as actual libraries, physical brick libraries, are really useful for you as a starting point to find academic literature about your subject. Documentaries and video essays, long form video essays on YouTube, and also YouTube courses as well. You can do things like massive online open courses, MOOCs. FutureLearn, which is part of the Open University, is a really great place to find these online courses. What haven't I mentioned? Museum exhibitions. Yeah, so whether these are online, whether they're digitized versions of the archives and the artifacts that a museum has in its possession, or whether you actually visit a museum's exhibition, either is a great starting point if that's relevant for your subject and your subject interests. And then finally, competitions as well. So we've already mentioned essay competitions, but there are lots of other competitions as well. And I'll mention one that we run at St John's in just a moment. So, oh yes, someone has put Olympiads in the chat as well. Absolutely. Maths Olympiads, maths challenges, they are excellent ways for maths and sciences students to get this super-curricular engagement going. So what I've got on the slide here are just some examples of what I've just talked about. So we've got documentaries like the Explained series on Netflix. We've got JSTOR, which is an open access repository of journals, academic journals and articles. TED Talks, Kurzgesagt, BBC Earth podcast. We've also got, you must have heard of the New Scientist or Nature or History Today. These are really popular magazines. So if you haven't, don't worry, go and Google them, and you can read articles. One of the articles that I sent you to read before this session actually was from Nature magazine. You also got things like National Geographic, and I Want to Study Engineering, which is something that Cambridge have set up, and it's a great, as well as Isaac Physics. If you haven't heard of Isaac Physics, I will send all of these links in the follow-up email, so don't worry about making notes at this point. But these, I Want to Study Engineering and Isaac Physics, and things like Underground Mathematics and Enrich, they have a lot of practice questions and examples, stretch and challenge maths and science-based problems for you to get your teeth into. So definitely have a look at those. Wonderful. Okay, so now is my time to plug for those of you who are based in the UK, and this is because the prizes are national book tokens, which you can only use in the UK. So that's why there's a restriction on the entry eligibility for this competition. But there's nothing stopping you, even if you're not eligible to enter, or indeed if you're not in year 12 or equivalent, or you're not UK based, you can still have a look at this webpage. I will see if it will work for me. Oh, yes, wonderful. So the St John's Poster Competition, we have launched it for this year again. You can read more information about the eligibility criteria and what we want from you. Essentially, it's an academic research poster with references and a separate bibliography. This is where CAM Guides, the resource I showed you before, the University Libraries resource with all of those helpful pieces of advice and guidance about things like putting a bibliography together, writing proper references, starting an academic research project, all of that, those skills that you need, and that knowledge you can often get from things like CAM guides. And at the bottom of this page, we also have a lot of resources and links that will be really helpful to you. So you don't have to submit a poster for the competition if you don't want to. You can use this website for whatever you want, basically. So please do look at it if you're doing an EPQ. Anything at all that will be asking you to do some sort of independent research project, you can use this webpage. There are examples of previous winning submissions from our poster competition. I won't scroll too far down so you can look at them in your own time properly. But yes, I would encourage all of you, if you're eligible, please do consider submitting a poster for the poster competition. You will see on this webpage the fantastic examples of submissions from students just like you from all over the UK who've submitted this. And it's a great super curricular opportunity. That's why I've mentioned it in today's session. It's because it's a way to consolidate all of the super curricular engagement exploration of your subject that you're doing. So things like EPQ, things like essay competitions, poster competitions, these are what I mean by ways to consolidate your super curricular activities. So do have a look at that webpage and let me know if you have any questions. You'll be pleased to know I do not judge the posters myself. Our academics at St John's, they're the ones that judge the posters. So anyone in your subject area, the specialism, they will be judging your poster. And everyone who submits gets individual feedback. And then, as I mentioned, there are prizes on offer in the form of national book tokens. Who doesn't love a book token? So why make supercurriculars or subject exploration a habit? So I've mentioned this a couple of times before. It's not something that you do as a one-off thing, supercurricular exploration. It really is something that you should do habitually. So why would you make it a habit then? It improves your understanding of current subjects. So it helps you with your current studies, with your current revision. It sort of puts the things that you're learning for your exams in the context, like the bigger picture, basically, the context of the subject as it is currently being studied. It's really helpful as well. Sometimes mark schemes will have included this. I can remember this, but do check the mark schemes because I'm getting on. But when I was in your position, I do remember sometimes mark schemes would definitely have a little line saying, any other extra information that this student has brought in from current topics, current debates in the subject. They're not just looking for you to regurgitate information from textbooks. You often have to have a broader understanding of the topic as well. So doing things like exploring around your subject isn't just for university applications. It's also for you in the here and now of being, a sixth form student. Expanding your areas of interest. Okay, so you will discover a lot by just reading one article, right? And then you'll go somewhere next that is recommended at the bottom of the article, for instance. You discover a lot. And so it's really, really fun, actually. You find out lots of new topics and questions, some things that you didn't even know existed, some ways of thinking that you had never encountered before. So yeah, it's fun, basically. It shows you interesting things that you wouldn't have uncovered necessarily. And then it also, as we've mentioned, supports your university applications. So thinking of you as a university applicant now, it helps you figure out what you can study at university, what your course choice should be. So it was last session, wasn't it, that we did about course choices back in March. Gosh, that seems ages ago. But we were talking about how to make that decision, how to have all the information you need to make the right choice of what you're going to study for 3+ years at university. Things like subjects exploration really help cement that decision for you. Because basically, if you're enjoying reading an article, watching a documentary, discussing it with your friend, that is the perfect litmus test. That is the indicator for you that that is a subject that you could probably have a lot of enjoyment studying at an even higher level at university. And it supports your university applications in a contents sense as well, because when you come to write your personal statement, we are essentially looking for you to demonstrate the fact that you've taken the initiative to delve deeper into your subject. So supercurriculars form a large part of your personal statement. And it's really a taster of university level study as well. So that kind of links back to helping you figure out what you want to study. But it's also useful to think of supercurriculars as a way to practice these skills that we were talking about before, coming up with your own perspective on something, having read a few things or watched a few things, and collating your ideas together and presenting that in an essay for an essay competition, or an academic research poster for a poster competition. So it's getting those skills of independent study and critical thinking, those university level skills. So it's really good practice for that. So it will stand you in good stead for when you actually start your studies at university. So how can you go about doing this? Basically, this slide has some steps on it, some 1 through to 6. This is an example framework of how you can go about exploring your subject in terms of supercurricular engagement. What I want you to take away are the 2 speech bubbles at the side. So I'll come to those in a minute, but these on the side there are really the main pieces of information. So don't worry if you don't, you will get a copy of these slides. So don't worry if you don't manage to make notes of everything. This is just an example of how you can go about putting supercurricular activities doing them, in a way that is really sustainable for you. So doing them in a way that will help you when you are coming to write your personal statement, for instance. So step 1 is to find the supercurricular resource or activity. So you can search in online resource hubs, the back of a book. You can ask your teacher for recommendations. Make sure you're making use of any keyword searches, category searches, in the search box at the top of all of these hubs of resources and articles, because it will really help you hone your search down. Then, once you've found something that looks like it could be of interest to you and is relating to your subject area, make sure you figure out what it is. So if it's an article, who wrote it, when was it written, make sure you can find the references for all of the arguments and the claims that the article is making. You just need to evaluate it, essentially. Like a GCSE history student, you're looking at provenance, purpose, all of those things. Step 3 is summarize. So this is really important as a test of whether you have understood what you've read, let's say, if it's an article. Can you describe to someone else what you learned from the article? Can you summarize the main arguments in your own words? Then step number 4, reflecting and responding. This is what we'll be practicing a little bit shortly with the examples of events that we are going to supercurricularify. So reflecting and responding, what questions are you left with? What thoughts and opinions do you come away from reading the article, for instance? Can you fill in any knowledge gaps, any new concepts or terms that came up in the article? How would you go and make sure that you understand what those the words, the jargon, the terms are? Can you think and then find any alternative viewpoints or approaches? So the article is going to be, one perspective or one summary of an event or a subject or an approach to something, whatever it may be, but it is just one resource. So make sure that you're thinking about what it isn't telling you, what's missing from the article, for instance. And then the bit in italics at the bottom of step 4, are there any connections that you can draw between what you've just read or watched or explored or listened to and another resource or topic that you've already explored? So that this bit in italics here will really come into play as you're doing more and more of this supercurricular with a concerted effort and in this habitual structured way that I'm setting out for you in these steps. So you'll start to be able to draw connections. You'll be like, oh yes, that actually links back to something I read last week. But interestingly enough, they had the completely opposite viewpoint, things like that. And then step 5, can you discuss this and consolidate what you've learned by explaining it to someone else? So you can talk to your friends. They don't have to be studying the same subject or be interested in the same subjects as you. It can be a really nice thing, actually, to reach across the subject barriers and understand your subjects in their true interdisciplinary form that they actually exist in the real world. Can you share ideas with other people? Basically, this is, again, as we were saying before, the true test of whether you've understood something is whether you can explain it to someone else. And then the final step, step 6, follow the thread. So go back to the beginning. and use the references that are cited in the article as a potential springboard to find your next article, documentary, podcast, whatever it may be. Follow where that curiosity takes you, basically. And it will essentially be this sort of snowballing effect. And what's really crucial is that you keep a record of the super-curricular activities that you're doing. So that is the first speech bubble that I'm coming to here. Make sure you have a log, a journal, essentially, of everything you're discovering and you're thinking about. It's really helpful for you when you come back to think about all of the super-curricular stuff you've done when you're writing your personal statement. And it may have been many months ago that you first read that article. It's really useful for you to be able to find that resource. So make sure you're making a note of the title, the author's name, maybe the URL, the link, something. You can just have it in the notes app on your phone. You can have a physical notebook, whatever works best for you. But make sure you are keeping a record of what you're discovering. That's going to be really helpful to you when you come and write your personal statement, essentially. And then the next speech bubble there, what do you think? So we don't want you to just parrot what has been said in the article. We want you to really critically and analytically reflect on what you have gained from it. So we are looking for students who are demonstrating essentially these university level skills, this independent research, this critical thinking. So your responses, your reflections are really crucial here. Why do you think that this is something important? Why is this question really crucial in your subject area? What has been missing in the arguments and the debates and the discussions in your subject area so far? So how would you make this super-curricular activity part of your personal statement? We will definitely come back to this example template of a research paragraph in your personal statement when we have the personal statements specific session in this webinar series later in summer. But essentially, what we're looking for is for you to demonstrate your super-curricular activities. And often, but not always, so this isn't a prescriptive secret formula. I want to preface that. Big disclaimer, this is just an example of how you can frame your super-curricular activities in your personal statement. But often students will put this in the form of their journey, the sort of process of how they explored their subject. So it might be an article, a documentary, made me think a lot about the impact of something on something else. So you've essentially summarized what sort of the article gave you in terms of an idea. This sparked my interest in some related topic, perhaps, and I explored further by, this could be researching something. You could say that you then made it into a poster or an essay for a competition, or you went and you visited an exhibition in a museum, whatever it may be, but you explored it further by doing something. And you have to be really explicit in your personal statement as well. So we want you to be giving us specific examples. And then the final sentence in my example template here for a personal statement paragraph, I think that is just a generic starter for what you could say when you're discussing it from your own perspective, your questions, your opinions, that critical and independent analysis of the topic, the question, whatever it may be. And then you might have the next paragraph being about your reflections on a resource on a similar topic, or it might be something else you've watched, listened, read that takes that same topic, but from a different context, for instance, or a different angle or a different perspective. So I have talked enough. It is now going to be over to you to be responding in the chat to these following daily super-curriculars. So what I like to do is have a look on things like History Today and Britannica.com, all of these lovely websites, and see what happened in history on this date. So I think it's particularly fun as a way to generate some springboards, some really random springboards for super-curricular discussion. So this is something you can do. This isn't the only way to make a start with doing a super-curricular activity, but it's a really fun one, I think. And you end up learning a lot. You know, sometimes it's quite surprising about what happened on a particular date in a particular year. So we're going to be looking at 4 different events or discoveries that happened on today's date, the 25th of April. And for each event, I want you to reflect on and give me your thoughts on the following. So what are the key facts or perspectives about this discovery or event? What's the thing that you would take away from this? What's the real kernel of interest for you? Then the second thing, how could you look at this from different subject angles? So nothing is ever just the interest of just one subject area. Everything can be thought about from many different subject angles through many different lenses, if you will. So for each event, I want you to have a think, what are the different subject angles on this? Could an academic from X subject and an academic from a completely different subject actually have very interesting things to say about the same event or discovery? And then finally, if you were to research this event or discovery or topic, whatever, further, what would you need to do that? So what resources, primary or secondary, might you need? And what questions would be maybe a good starting point for your own research project on this topic, whatever it may be? Okay, are we ready? Let's go. So on the 25th of April in 1792, the first guillotine execution occurred in France. Now, this is the article that I had linked, the guillotine's first cut. And I've got an illustration of the guillotine from, I think, from the same place. I think I tried to get it to be Place de Grève, but don't quote me on that. I think I found the correct location for this guillotine. So in the chat then, thinking about these questions, what are the key facts or perspectives? What are the different subject angles? And what would you need to research this further on your own? Who wants to go first? What could you say about this event that happened on the 25th of April? What are the key facts, the key questions, the key perspectives? Absolutely. Thank you for the first response there. You could look at how the guillotine was designed. Absolutely. In both the sense of the physical construction of this machine, but also the story behind how it came to be. Did anyone read the article? And did anyone have any thoughts about this event and the sort of the invention of the guillotine, I suppose? Yes, we've also got, so thinking about the before, how it came to be, but also thinking about the after as well. So what are the knock-on effects of this event in French history? Absolutely. That's a really good question as a sort of launch to think further about it. Absolutely. You can bring in ethical implications, thinking about this in terms of methods of punishment in society and people's responses to it. Yes, the impact it had on the number of different types of executions, the crime rates essentially. Yes, absolutely. Someone said in the chat whose idea it was. Did anyone read the article? Did anyone have a read of? Um, I can see some people who did. Does anyone want to share in the chat? Yes. So I think someone has shared it. So essentially, its inventor ended up essentially really regretting the fact that they had invented it because they wanted. Does anyone? I'm just scrolling down. Gosh, there are so many um, responses in the chat. I don't want to speak for anyone if they've said it. Yes, absolutely. So definitely do read this article if you're interested in finding out more about this. Um, but essentially, it was created to be a great equalizer because only the upper class um, criminals were executed in a quote humane, quick way with a sword, I believe, wasn't it? I think that's what the article was saying. And so this person invented this new form of punishment um, to to replace the more long drawn out brutal in many ways of executing someone. But then the ultimate use of the guillotine Yeah, exactly. So it's sort of a counterproductive invention, which is very interesting. So it was intended to be almost a democratic invention in a way. That was according to the inventor, that was the intention there. Absolutely. So I'm thinking subjects that we've covered so far. So thinking about the subject angles, that second point, history, politics. We can also look at the physics of it as well and think about the how it actually works, the mechanics of it, which might be quite interesting. So lots of different humanities subjects, sociology, criminology, our human, social, and political sciences course, for instance, HSPS at Cambridge. The symbolism of it as well, absolutely. Yeah, you've got such great responses, everyone, in the chat. I'm so sorry I'm not able to shout all of these out. Yeah, it's really interesting to think about it from a philosophical point of view as well. We discussed earlier the ethics and then also the philosophy behind it as well. Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful. Okay, in the interest of time, I'm going to move on, but that was a brilliant start. Thank you so much, everyone. Okay, the next one, we're staying in the same century, aren't we? Yes. Don't know why I was just very drawn to the 18th century when I was making this session. So, on the 25th of April in 1719, Robinson Crusoe by Daniel Defoe was first published in paperback. The title is actually very long: The Life and Strange, Surprising Adventures of Robinson Crusoe, etc., etc. I won't read it all. Um, that was the article there that I linked for you in the pre-reading email. Did anyone have any thoughts about this super-curricular event? Let's say this event that happened and how you could super-curricularify it. What subject angles could you bring in? What are the key perspectives on this book and the reception of it in different eras, perhaps in different contexts? Yes, absolutely. The use of literature to justify imperialism, so thinking about it from a post-colonial angle, which is a really important way of analyzing texts, and particularly texts that were meant to be read by many people. Yes, I was wondering that as well about I don't know. I'm sorry that I didn't have time to delve deeper and do my own super-curricular exploration in preparation for this. But I was wondering about the how many copies were published and sold. What I did read, um, I've got the article up here, so I'm just looking at it, was that there were sequels, which I wasn't aware of. So that would suggest that it was quite popular, right? In the context of its own production. Yeah, so the paperback idea is that's an angle you could take, thinking about more broadly, thinking about publishing, the publishing industry, mass production, mass consumption of literature, so that you could use this one event and then not think about Robinson Crusoe ever again, and then launch yourself into discussions about this. Absolutely. Yes, so I can see a few of you have read the article, which is fantastic. It's essentially looking at the text and the themes in it, the messages that you can take away from it, and how we should be really critical when we're reading texts like this and understanding them in the context of their time, but not excusing them just because they were written in that time, but really figuring out where that production of its of the in terms of the novel, the book, um, how it works in texts and their contexts, essentially, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, you don't have to have read Robinson Crusoe, be interested in Robinson Crusoe to think about it in this way. There are lots of other, if you're minded to think about materials and culture and literature. So all of our different literature and humanities courses cover this in some way. Thinking about texts that are produced in different eras, you can take whatever starting point you want with this, but this is just an example. Just so happens on this day in 1719 this particular book was published. So yeah, absolutely, really good responses there as well. Thank you so much. Okay, moving on to more scientific events and discoveries and things like that for the final two that I have for you today. On the 25th of April in 1990, the Hubble Space Telescope was placed into orbit about 600 kilometers above Earth by the crew of the Space Shuttle Discovery. Did anyone read the article on this? And or did anyone want to offer some reflections? What are the key facts, the key perspectives? What is interesting to think about with this? Yes, absolutely. So the data that was collected, what effect did that have on our knowledge and understanding in terms of space exploration, in terms of thinking about, yeah, exactly. How did it change scientific knowledge, scientists' understanding? Yes, also the engineering process for the telescope. Did anyone read the article about the issue with the mirrors? This again was something that was completely new to me. I'd never heard about this before, so it's quite interesting. Yes, absolutely. I can see someone has. The fact that the scientists were able to fix the flaws with the telescope. Yeah, definitely. Oh, brilliant responses here. Wonderful. Yes. So thinking about why this urge to look at the Earth from this perspective, not just in a we're above the atmosphere, so we get better images, but also thinking about our own. Again, it's philosophy, isn't it? It's sort of thinking about our own understanding of ourselves. Someone's response there, seeking the beauty in nature, something human in wanting to keep exploring. Yeah, you could definitely use this as a springboard to think about great thinkers and what they've said about humanity and our urge to explore. That's a really nice, humanities way from this event. So yeah, that's excellent. Yes, I think the mirror was sort of warped, wasn't it? Yeah, absolutely. Yes, and as a defining moment as well, in space exploration and how far we've come as well. It'd be interesting, I think, maybe to, if you're interested in something like this, to track the really crucial developments and think what was significant about them and where are we going next? Thinking about where in 10, 20, 30 years could we be in terms of this exact scientific understanding and these sorts of creations. Absolutely. So thinking about it in the context of where it's going. Wonderful. Yeah, a milestone. Yes, and indeed the physics as well, of how something orbits above the Earth. Wonderful. Sorry, I'm going on and on and on because you've got such great responses, but I'm running out of time. So I will move swiftly on to the final event or discovery that happened on this date, which is on the 25th of April in 1953. um, Francis Crick and James Watson, they published their discovery of the double helix structure of DNA, and this was published in Nature magazine. The link I have there is from Nature magazine, but it's not their DNA discovery publication. It's actually reflecting on another element of this event. Did anyone read the article? Would anyone like to share what that article is talking about? Yes, absolutely. So I have deliberately put Crick and Watson on the slide, both in their names in the text and also the image that I've chosen here. And then the article actually shows that we are essentially eclipsing a woman Rosalind Franklin, who was integral to this discovery, this you really can't think of a more of a milestone in terms of scientific discovery than understanding the structure of DNA. It's a really interesting article, so definitely go read it. Yes, absolutely. So someone is thinking about this, so not just the feminist perspective of female scientists in history being overlooked and not included in published papers in research, not getting the claim and the acknowledgement that they deserve, but also thinking about the actual DNA structure itself. So you could go and think about the different theories, the types of knot theory. This is new to me, so thank you. Yeah, so you can look at it in terms of biology, in terms of genetics, absolutely. Yep, you can think about other instances, and I'm sure there will be, sadly many instances of women in science that, where they've been overlooked. Yes, and how this discovery, what the knock-on effects of this discovery were. So we've talked about this with the telescope, and also thinking about in terms of the guillotine as well, in terms of methods of punishment, where this sits in the long timeline of similar discoveries. Absolutely. How it impacted medicine, how our understanding changed. Yeah, wonderful. It's a really, you can go off in many different directions. It's a really wide, absolutely. You can think of it in the chemistry of it. You can go really far down into actually looking at the structure and understanding it, and what they didn't know at the time as well, and what we do know now. Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful, wonderful responses, everyone. Thank you so much. This is fantastic. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, the equipment that was used as well. Absolutely. The article shows the X-ray images, I think it is, which show the structure. Very interesting. Again, something, I'm not a scientist myself, so something I'd never come across before. So I hope what you have found today is that, you can take a random, essentially, event that happened to have occurred on whatever date that we find ourselves on, and you can think about it from many different subject angles. You can use it as a springboard. If it's something that doesn't interest you, it's absolutely fine. You don't have to always use, an event as a supercurricular activity. But if you're thinking, I'm looking for just something random, try Britannica.com, try History Today, just try Googling what happened today and then today's date, and you will find lots of really interesting springboards for your own supercurricular activity. That's wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone, for engaging in that. I will include the links to those articles if you would like to read them in the follow-up email as well. Wonderful. And if anyone is watching on YouTube on the recording, then do get in touch with me. My email is accessofficer@joh.cam.ac.uk if you would like the slides and if you would like the articles that I've included in the session. Wonderful. Thanks, everyone. I will now stop the recording, and then I will take your questions, everyone who is attending live.